You know that moment when you decide, with all the determination in the world, that you're going to tidy your room? You start off excited, until you notice a forgotten yogurt pot behind the dresser. Then you start to wonder, is it spoiled? And of course, the next thing you know, you're opening the fridge, staring at the shelves, rearranging the little pots, maybe even cleaning out the freezer.
Mission Tidy Room?
Oh, that's for later, or never. If this sounds too familiar, congratulations, you're probably experiencing one of those classic ADHD moments. For those with the disorder, this type of diversion is as common as breathing. It's what I call the magic of distraction. You start with an idea, and your brain, which works like a hyperactive squirrel on a skate park, starts pulling your focus from one side to the other, and before you know it, you've already changed tasks and rooms. But don't worry, this isn't a sign of laziness or lack of willpower. On the contrary, it's just the special way the ADHD brain works. And there's an explanation for all this mess, and there's even a good side to it. When we talk about ADHD, the difficulty in staying focused on a single task is one of the main characteristics. What seems simple, like cleaning your room, becomes an adventure full of detours, because the brain can't keep its attention on what we'd like, and worse, it's also very sensitive to internal and external stimuli. Imagine your brain as a train station where the passengers are your ideas and tasks. For those with ADHD, these trains arrive and leave in a somewhat disorganized way. Sometimes, the train you wanted to catch, focus on your room, goes to another platform, reorganize the refrigerator, and you don't even realize you've changed destination. This creates a frustrating feeling that your focus has simply gone. That's why we see so many people with ADHD starting one thing and finishing another, or sometimes not finishing anything at all. And look, this happens to everyone who has the disorder. It's not a sign of incompetence or carelessness. It's just the brain trying to juggle too many balls at the same time, and some end up falling. The good news is that understanding how this works helps you to let go of the guilt, to accept yourself better, and to find strategies that work for you. Deep down, this inner squirrel can be an ally, if we learn to deal with it. Ready to dive into this journey? Let's find out what happens in the brain, and how to transform this confusion into something that works in your favor, without losing your humor and self-love. Let's imagine your brain as a busy train station, full of passengers, who are your ideas, thoughts, and tasks. Normally, trains arrive at the right platform, and we can board a single line, following the path to our destination, focusing on the task. But with ADHD, this station is a bit of a mess. Why? Because some chemicals, such as dopamine and norepinephrine, which act as traffic controllers at this station, are at different levels or don't work exactly as they should. Dopamine, for example, is the reward and motivation chemical. When it doesn't provide the right coordinates, the brain gets a bit lost, unable to hold your attention for long. It's as if your brain were a television with 1,000 channels and the remote control is faulty. You try to stay on just one channel, but the TV insists on changing to another, and another, without asking for your opinion. And the worst part, sometimes the remote doesn't even respond properly, and you end up changing the channel by accident. This chemical mess makes it difficult not only to focus, but also to control impulses, that sudden urge to get up, leave the room, check your phone, or change activities in the middle of a task. It's a combination of I can't sit still, and my mind won't stay still. But it's important to remember, this isn't a character flaw, laziness, or lack of interest. It's just the brain working at a different pace, with special needs for attention and stimulation. So what seems like inattention is actually a brain that needs a little more care and strategies that work with it. Understanding this science, even in a simple way, is already a step towards stopping blaming yourself and starting to embrace your unique way of functioning. A way that, by the way, has many hidden strengths, ready to shine. Starting to tidy your room and ending up reorganizing the fridge seems like one of those funny stories that only people with ADHD can truly understand. But there's a very interesting reason for this, something we can call the task butterfly effect. Think of a butterfly flapping its wings on one side of the world and on the other side, causing a storm. It seems like an exaggeration, but something similar happens with attention. A small distraction can trigger a sequence of events that take you somewhere completely different from what you planned. In your case, that sock on the floor caught your attention, but when you picked it up, you saw a forgotten yogurt container, which led you to the fridge, which was a bit of a mess, and so you decided to quickly tidy it up, and voila, your initial plan of tidying your room was put on hold. This isn't a lack of focus, it's just the ADHD brain following its own script, jumping from one stimulus to another, trying to find something that grabs your attention or seems urgent. It's a natural response for a brain that is constantly seeking novelty and stimulation to avoid getting bored. Sure, this journey can be frustrating, especially when the to-do list seems endless. But there's a funny side to it all. You'll probably end up finding things you've lost, organizing spaces you never imagined, and creating funny stories to tell later. Ultimately, this mess is all part of your unique way of thinking and acting, and learning to accept that can turn frustration into self-compassion and a good laugh. If the brain is a hyperactive squirrel, how do we keep it on track without slipping? The good news is that there are simple tricks that can help organize the mess without it becoming an impossible task. First, break down tasks into smaller pieces. Cleaning the room is like a giant monster, but putting away the clothes, organizing the desk, and cleaning the floor are missions that the brain can digest better. And each little piece completed becomes a victory that motivates the next one.
Another tip. Use timers, the famous Pomodoro, you know?
Work for 15 minutes, take a quick break, and repeat. The ADHD brain loves breaks to recharge its battery. Creating flexible routines also helps. It doesn't have to be rigid, but having some moments of the day reserved for simple tasks gives the mind a map to guide it. And less visual stimulation. A clean and organized environment reduces distractions. The famous less is more is almost a law for the brain that is always jumping from one thing to another. Finally, don't put too much pressure on yourself. The focus is on training, not competition. Embracing your brain's unique ways is the biggest secret to turning chaos into partnership. In the end, having ADHD is just one part of your story, and what an interesting part. It's like trying to tame a wild horse. It's hard work, there are setbacks, but it also brings with it a unique energy and a lot of creativity. When we start to accept this different way of functioning, frustration turns into curiosity, mess turns into discovery, and focus becomes a daily practice, not an eternal demand. So, the next time your plan to tidy up your room ends up reorganizing the fridge, remember, you're not alone in this crazy adventure of attention and distraction. It's just your brain dancing to its own rhythm, and that can be much cooler than it seems. Breathe, smile, and move on. After all, this whole journey is just another chapter in your incredible story, with mess, laughter, and of course, a lot of life.